It's time for Movie Buzz. It is time for Movie Buzz. Tell your mom, your sister, and your cousin it's time for Movie Buzz. Here comes your host, Zach, carrying a six-pack. Come on over, enjoy the phone. It's time for Movie Buzz. Yeah, come on over, enjoy the phone. It's time for Movie Buzz. Yes, it is. I am your host, Zach, and welcome to the show Movie Buzz. We are proud to be brought to you by Team ProCreate. We now join two other podcasts, Pod on Pod and the Non-Content Podcast, on the Procast side of Team ProCreate. What Team ProCreate is a collaborative effort. It's a great way to get things started, to keep things going, and to work with others. So head on over to teamprocreate.com and check out what I'm talking about, because it's pretty incredible. We're glad to have you here for our Interviews, Volume 2, with Betty Jo Tucker and Christina Hamlett. Before we begin, I just wanted to get a little candid here, as if we don't do that enough. And I received this email from a person. It's actually kind of one of the first big, I don't know what I want to call it, reactions that we've gotten so far. So without any further ado, there'll be a little bit edited out of the email, so as not to give away any detailed information about the person. And it reads thusly: Zach, I just liked your Facebook page. Still, I must say that you should put on a different picture of yourself. While it doesn't have to be a serious picture, the picture you have now suggests nudity below the waistline, and it looks like something a college fraternity pledge would post as part of his initiation process. You never know who is looking at your social media profile. So, if you have any other picture of yourself, namely one in which you are wearing clothes, it would be best to post that as your ID picture. Thanks again. Great. Just to let the listeners know, there is no suggested nudity. It is complete nudity. I was completely naked. There is no suggestion. The only suggestion is that you should avert your eyes if you don't enjoy it. I'm really glad we got this commentary. So even though it may sound like I don't enjoy it, I actually like being told to put my clothes on. It means we're actually making an impact on people, which is always a good thing. So with that being said, we're going to head over to Miss Betty Jo Tucker, critic, author. You'll just have to hear to believe. I would like to introduce our listeners to editor, film critic, author of various reviews and articles and books, entertainment journalist, and tap dancing enthusiast, Betty Jo Tucker. Does that work for an intro?
I love it.
Okay, excellent. Yeah, like I said, you sent us a copy of Confessions of a Movie Addict. You sent us a copy to give away as well, but you sent me a personal copy. I've been reading it, and I'm really, really enjoying it, so that's where I got the tap dancing enthusiast, of course.
Well, I just am so pleased that you enjoyed it, and I can tell that you did by by the fact that you're interested in interviewing me.
Oh, yeah.
So thank you very much for reading the book, and I hope you did get a few chuckles out of it.
I've made it painfully obvious that I've enjoyed it. Yeah. No, I've got quite a lot of insight. Not only laughs, but a lot of insight too. I like the insider type of reading, if that makes sense.
Yes, it is. I did try to give a view, sort of an insider's look at being a film critic and being a movie addict. So yes, you picked up on that, and I'm so glad you picked up on the tap dancing too.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. No, it sounds like it was kind of your foray into the whole entertainment industry.
Right.
Before I forget, is there an aspect in filmmaking or in films that occurs sometimes that maybe distracts you from the movie and takes you out of the story?
Yeah, there really sometimes the film, it's just going along and I'm really enjoying it, and then something will happen that kind of takes me out of the story, and I get very disappointed about that. One thing is when I don't know about you, but there's a lot of movies with flashbacks, and there are two different actors.
Oh, yeah.
Playing, there's the person playing the actor as a young, or actress as a young person, and then you don't see any similarity at all with the older actor, and so I noticed that right away, and that takes me out of the story. The Debt, that's the movie I'm thinking of.
Oh, okay.
And Helen Mirren, as the older character, she didn't have this cleft in her chin, but then when the movie, did the flashback with Jessica Chastain, there's that very distinct cleft in her chin. And I go, oh no, that can't be that character at a younger age. I don't know, am I being too picky, Zach?
No, you're losing me here. I was watching Elysium last night with Matt Damon. It's like a sci-fi type of movie.
Oh, Elysium, yes. Elysium.
Now I'm drawing a blank here. What's her? Oh, Jodie Foster.
It was difficult, I think, to accept Jodie Foster.
Her accent?
In that role in Elysium, to me. And that also, they should have had maybe an actress that wasn't so well known for that role.
Or even in
Elysium. So that took me out of that movie, too. So I'm with you on that one.
Well, actually, I think we might have her British accent. I think it was supposed to be British, but it was dropping or something horribly, and I just could not imagine her being this, proper stick up her butt British type lady. But the accent was dropping.
Good for you. We're thinking alike.
Okay, good.
Definitely thinking alike on that. And I did receive a lot of complaints about my review of that movie because I was, not very complimentary about it, and so it's interesting that you picked that one.
It just happened to be a recent watch, actually.
And I love Jodie Foster. I've been a big fan. I've seen practically all of her movies, and so that was a shock to me. And I never liked to pan anybody's performance unless I absolutely have to, but in that case, I kind of did.
Darn it. Well, before we get too far into the interview, I just wanted to let listeners know that they can go over to bettyjotucker.com. You have links there to your Real Talk movie reviews, and you also have a show on blogtalkradio.com, the Movie Addict headquarters.
Yes.
Okay. Just wanted to
you can get to all my stuff if you go to that personal website. There's Denise Casino, who is, I call her old wizardly one, because she did the site, the website development.
Okay.
And she really did a great job, because if you want to see my movie reviews, there's a little ticket at the top where you can click on reviews. If you want to see interviews, you can click on the interviews. If you want to go to the radio show, there's a way to get to the radio show. There's a way to get to my books, a little bit about my books. And I think she did a great job on that website. So I always do ask people to go to the personal site, because you can then get everywhere, even to Real Talk, which is my movie-related site, and of course, as you mentioned, to Movie Addict headquarters, which is the radio show I do every week, which has kind of taken over my life. I know you might feel that way with your radio show too. Once you get started, it's just sort of all-consuming, isn't it?
Yes, it is, but that is part of the movie addict in me, I guess, because on the show, we just sit down and watch movies and get guests on that like movies or involved with movies or whatever, so it definitely fuels my addiction. So to speak.
It's so great to get to talk to a person who's as obsessed with films as I am.
No, I will.
I think you're getting there, Zach.
I'm getting there, huh? So there's
right.
Well, a part of your career involves being it said Hollywood reporter is what I read it as, entertainment journalist. You've interviewed some really big names: Willem Dafoe, Annette Bening, Aaron Eckhart, Fred Willard, Bob Saget, among others. What interviews have caused you to be the most nervous, and why?
I am always nervous before an interview. I was nervous before this interview,
Me
and
too.
I'm not even conducting the interview. So I'm always nervous until it gets started. Then I think it's great. But I was extra nervous and even afraid for my interview with Aaron Eckhart.
Mm-hmm.
And this was his first movie, I believe. I had just seen In the Company of Men, and I think that came out back in 1997. And Zach, I don't know whether you've seen this or not, but he played one of the most deliberately malicious evildoers on film. I mean, this character he plays, he hates everyone, especially women. And he was just so convincing that I couldn't believe that he was acting.
Oh, no.
I mean, I thought, and so there I was waiting for his phone call because it was a phone interview. And I was just afraid, what he was going to be like when I got him on the phone, or when he got me on the phone. And surprise, surprise, he was the most gentlemanly, polite, courteous person that you could possibly interview. It was such a change from what he was in that movie, and that just proved to me what a great actor he was going to be, because I hadn't seen him in anything, up till that time. So I've tried to see most of his movies after that. But it was so funny when I was talking with him. I mentioned to him how fearful I was before talking with him, and he said, "Oh, don't worry about that." He said his girlfriend's mother wasn't sure she could trust him anymore after seeing that film. And he also told me that he didn't want his own mother to see him in the film because he was afraid she would be upset. So I wasn't the only one who felt that way about him. Did you happen to see In the Company of Men?
No, I have not, but I did read your review, and it made me want, like, all of these movies that you reviewed just make me want to see them more.
Well, that one, I think you can get that on Netflix. Hooray for Netflix. And I definitely recommend that you see that particular film. He's certainly gone on from that to become one of our finest working actors today, I think. So
absolutely.
I really, I remember his interview with great affection.
He's a chameleon, so like an Aaron Brockovich. And then, he's definitely a well-versed actor. I'm sure that he's pretty easy on the eyes, so that
he is. And then when he did, we did a movie with Catherine Zeta-Jones. Was it Without Reservation? Where
No
he played
Reservation.
The chef.
Mm-hmm.
And Abigail Breslin was in it, and he was just so delightful. He can do everything. He can do, the comedy and the drama, and the superhero and the villain. So he's very well-rounded. I just don't think he can sing and dance. That's the only thing that keeps him off of my, top 10 list.
Top 10 list of actors all time?
Yeah.
Well, it used to be a big requirement. Now, not so much, it doesn't seem like.
No, and it's very disturbing to me because my favorite genre is musicals. And I just get so excited whenever I hear there's a musical that's coming out. So that's why I'm looking forward so much to the Jersey Boys, which I think is going to be released this summer.
Right.
And I'm looking forward to Sunday when Hugh Jackman, Be Still My Heart, hosts the Tonys again, because I'll finally get to see him sing and dance again. I was just hoping he'd make, more musicals than Les Miserables. I mean, there was no dancing in Les Miserables. So
that's what I was going to say. And then you get a Russell Crowe in a Les Mis, and you kind of miss the glory days.
That was a little heavy for a musical, but it was definitely well done. But you're right. I think a lot of the stars that we see now do know how to sing and dance. But there's just not that much demand for it in the movies now, and those musicals cost so much money to make. So we kind of have to be, those of us that are avid movie musical fans, we've got to get our fix by watching Dancing with the Stars or So You Think You Can Dance, and I'm very much into those particular television shows.
Have you developed any kind of lasting relationship with any of the celebrities or their families that you've encountered?
This is really important because I am a fan of Annette Bening's, and I was the Dean of Humanities at Mesa College in San Diego for a number of years. It just so happened that Annette was one of our drama students, and so when she started out with getting roles in movies, I invited her back to Mesa to conduct a workshop for our drama students. And by the way, that was a marvelous experience for those for those students. She
I
just
bet.
gave them, so many great tips, and she was so generous with her time and very entertaining as well as enlightening. And her mother and father were there for the workshop, and of course, as the dean, part of my duties, interact with the guests there. And as a result of that, Shirley Bening and I became friends. And even though I no longer live in San Diego, she and I email each other and keep each other posted. And so I guess you could say that that's a lasting relationship. But other than that, I do have some of the celebrities that are willing, to come back on the show or to have more than one interview, and I'm really appreciative of that. So that's a very good question, because I just felt so appreciative of the time that Annette spent with our students, and then of the fact that brought me into contact with Shirley Bening and her dad. They're both such wonderful people, and they still live in San Diego. And Shirley and Grant, that's the dad's name, they're just so excited because Annette, just I think a month ago, opened in a one-woman show in Los Angeles.
Very cool.
She's just getting rave reviews. Well, she just commands the stage. She does just as fine work on the stage as she does in the movies, and I think she's really a terrific actress. I just wish that we could see her in more films. Have you seen Annette Bening's new film, The Face of Love?
No, I haven't.
That will be released on Netflix I believe it is next month. So that's another one that I would recommend. And she is just wonderful in it, as is Ed Harris, who is her co-star. And what a pair to draw to, Shirley Bening and Ed Harris.
Right. No, I'm a big fan of Ed Harris's work.
He's so believable on screen, isn't he?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, he commands your attention, but then he just comes off as, your good friend next door. There are some up-and-coming actors, actresses, and directors that are trying to take the place of these Hollywood mainstays like Ed Harris and Annette Bening. Who are some of the up-and-coming actors and directors that excite you as a fan of film?
I am thinking that you mean by up-and-coming ones that haven't made, exactly made it, but I am a fan of, and I hope that they do. So I don't think you're talking about somebody like Jennifer Lawrence, which I would have answered, maybe 2 years ago, but just look how she's risen to the zenith of her career, practically, with already 2 Oscars. So the ones that right now, I'm just so obsessed with are Tatiana Maslany. She is now starring in that BBC series Orphan Black, and she plays all of the clones, and that is one of the best acting jobs I have ever seen. The way she becomes all these different clones, it's just absolutely amazing. And she's a Canadian, and she's been in several Canadian movies. I saw her in Picture Day. She was absolutely wonderful in that too. So I'm rooting for her, and I'm definitely her fan. There's also Jermaine Clement. He is one of the stars of the HBO series Flight of the Conchords.
Right. Mm-hmm.
You know who I'm talking about.
He was in Men in Black 3.
Yes, he was in Men in Black 3. But I hadn't heard of Flight of the Conchords until I had seen the Muppet Most Wanted movie. In that movie, there's quite a bit of camera time to a show that's being put on in a prison. And Jermaine plays the prison king. And there's a scene where Kermit is having the prisoners put on a show, and that they're doing some of the routines from a chorus line. And there's this big burly guy doing all these dance steps, doing some ballet. And I thought, who is that? Who is that? So I went over to the Internet Movie Database, and I looked up Muppets Most Wanted, and I found out Prison King, and it said,
Prison
Jermaine
King.
Clement. I thought, oh my gosh, now I got to find out if there's anything else I can see him in. So I go down and I see Flight of the Conchords, and my husband and I both feel this way about this guy, and we've been binging for the past 2 weeks on
Nice.
Flight of the Conchords, and we're just so amazed at him and his singing ability and his ability at comedy, and I just hope that he gets a lot more roles and that we can see him. So those are two. I also am really rooting for Derek Huff. He's the wonderful choreographer and dancer on Dancing with the Stars.
Right. Mm-hmm.
He could be great in movies. Now I know that this movie Make Your Move, he plays a tap dancer in it, and I'm so disappointed that I haven't seen it and that I didn't get a screener sent to me and it didn't open in our area.
Mm-hmm.
But I think Derek could have quite a future in movies, and he's just got that charisma, so we're rooting for him. And Chadwick Boseman, I know he's had mostly just television roles, but when I saw that guy in 42, and he played Jackie Robinson,
Mm-hmm.
my gosh, he did hit the ball out of the park. He was wonderful, and I just can hardly wait to see him in playing James Brown.
Oh,
and,
cool.
Get On Up, I think, and that movie comes out. So there'll be some musical numbers in that, I think, and I'm really looking forward to it because I've checked the previews, and it looks like he's got the right moves when he does some of the James Brown numbers. So I get very, very excited about those. And as far as directors go, I'm so afraid I'll leave somebody out because there are so many wonderful independent movie directors that are just doing wonderful work. Daniel Stamm, I don't know whether you know him. He did the Last Exorcism, and he's also did that chilling horror movie 13 Sins. He's got such an eye for the visual as well as being sensitive to the storytelling.
Mm-hmm.
Misha Zubarev, who has a short film called 18 and Out, which shows his potential in terms of knowing how things should look on the screen, as well as having a compelling story to tell.
Very cool.
And there's another independent filmmaker I think should make it, and I'm a big fan of his. His name is Von Regensburger. His first film was called The Last of the Romantics. It was one of the most beautiful films that I've ever seen, and he's got a new movie coming out. I think they're doing pre-production now called A Remarkable Life. So those are some. I'm sure there are others because I watch for these people.
Okay.
And I like to watch how their career grows. But I'm so glad you knew about Jermaine Clement. I didn't see Men in Black 3. I'm going to have to put that on my Netflix. What do you think about him?
Well, I enjoy the New Zealand accent a lot, so I think that definitely draws me and it keeps my attention. In Men in Black 3, he's a very demanding presence. He
could be. He's so big and burly looking.
He's huge. You've had some interesting interviews on your radio show and in person. If you could tell us about some of the more humorous interactions you've had either on the show or doing in-person interviews.
No doubt about it. Taking the top of my list of most funny was Cloris Leachman.
Yeah.
I absolutely. First of all, I thought I'm so lucky to have her.
Absolutely.
On the show.
Oh yeah.
And it was right after she wrote her autobiography, and it was just released. And so I think that's how we got her on the show, because I reviewed her autobiography, and then I asked her to come on the show to talk about it. And so I was so excited. So was my producer, Nikki Starr, and we were, and our fans. And when Cloris came on the show, it wasn't an interview. It was a comedy ambush.
Oh no.
She just took over the whole show. She brought her son with her.
Mm-hmm.
He was her manager at the time. I don't know whether he still is. I forgot about any questions that I had planned. We just kind of let her roll with the show. She brought her own sound effects.
Oh my!
She said, "Oh, my cook has just brought me this delicious soup. Oh, crunch, crunch, crunch." And then she mentioned it was her birthday. So my co-host and my producer and I sang happy birthday to her. And she said that was the worst singing she had ever heard. It was the most fun.
Well, Cloris, thanks for being on the show.
I could hardly keep things going because I was just laughing all the time she was there. But she did, share some of the inside information about working for Mel Brooks.
Mm-hmm.
And about the roles that she played. She was just a lot of fun talking about playing Nurse Diesel in High Anxiety. She had us in stitches over that. So that's number one. And then the second one that was the most humorous, but not in so much of a joyful way. It was just a funny thing, that kind of happened. Mm-hmm. That I'll never forget. And it was when Tony Curtis was interviewed on our show. And, of course, he was, I think we had, if not the last Tony Curtis interview, it was one of the last, because he passed away shortly after that.
Right.
But he had a hearing problem, and, I have too, because I'm no spring chicken. And this happens to you as you get older. You lose some of your faculties. And so he wasn't hearing things quite right.
Mm-hmm.
So he actually didn't hear my name correctly.
Oh, no.
But this is what he said. He said, "Oh, Betty Culpepper. What a name. What a name." He says, "Have I got the movie for you?" He says, "Listen to this. Montana Skies, starring Betty Culpepper." I wasn't going to argue with him.
Yeah, almost, but not quite.
So now, I'm still called Betty Culpepper by a lot of the people that heard that show, or that were on the show. So those were two. Another one that was kind of funny, and yet it turned out to be wonderful, even though it was taken away from me. The show was kind of taken away from me. It was when we had Rita Moreno on the show to talk about celebrating the 60th anniversary of Singin' in the Rain, which, by the way, is my all-time favorite movie. And Robert Osborne from Turner Classic Movies was also on the show.
Oh, I love him.
Here's the surprise. Those two people had never met each other before.
Really?
This was the first time. And I could tell they were absolutely enthralled with each other. And so they kind of took over the show. And Rita, I mean, she revealed some of the most interesting things about her acting career. She said that Jerome Robbins almost killed me in rehearsals for West Side Story. and she said it like she meant it. And so they just made, they made my day in terms of a wonderful show, but it wasn't really, what I had planned. So, as you know, from your experience,
don't I?
Sometimes it can get away from you. I may not be one to complain about that because I think I probably do. So you're going to have to keep me on the straight and narrow here.
Oh no, I'll keep you in shape. It's okay. We'll take care of it. Betty Culpepper, you've had some interesting interviews over the years. If you could, this is something I've been kind of interested in when I started reading Confessions of a Movie Addict, about your style of interview. And you've interviewed the Academy Award statuette, the Oscar, the mouse from the film Mouse Hunt, and a deceased Charles Dickens. So if you could tell me about interviewing those people, how did you come up with the premise? And
I'm so glad you asked.
I'm
it's
interested.
A combination of wishful thinking and a runaway imagination,
mm-hmm.
plus technology, I guess. But I'll tell you how this came about, doing those kind of interviews. When The Little Mermaid was being released, it was one of the anniversaries, the Disney Little Mermaid. Samuel E. Wright, who played Sebastian the Crab,
right,
was helping with the PR about that movie. And at the time, he was in New York, starring in The Lion King. And so I had a telephone interview scheduled with him. And so he started talking about how he had kept the spirit of Sebastian the Crab and the songs, Under the Sea, the kind of songs that he sang in it, by performing them. And so he kept everything alive and all. And so just out of the blue, I said, well, could you put Sebastian the Crab on the phone? And I thought I was just being, kidding.
Right.
And he said, well, just a minute here. He says, he's kind of crawling around here somewhere. Let me see. And I said, well, you might have trouble, he might have trouble holding the phone, with his claws and all. He said, well, I'll hold the phone for him. So he became Sebastian the Crab for that interview. And it was hilarious.
That sounds like a lot of fun.
It was just great. He went with it, and it was just great. And so that review was published, and then the Preview magazine editor liked it so much she wanted me to do the same thing with the mouse from the film Mouse Hunt. And I told her, well, this is going to be difficult because at least Sebastian the Crab was had a voice. The mouse from Mouse Hunt didn't. And she said, well, we'll just title it. If this mouse could talk. So then I did that, and I just enjoyed that so much. So that's when I started then doing these other kinds of things. And 1 year close to the Oscar, I thought, well, let's just do the Oscar. And I have a friend who is a film critic who does voices, and he agreed to be the voice of the Oscar on the show. We actually did the same thing on the show, but the first Oscar one was just published in the newspaper. And then around Christmas time 1 year, I thought, my goodness, how many Christmas Carol films have been made?
Oh,
and
gosh.
so I thought, well, we'll do one of these same kinds of interviews with Charles Dickens. So I do have a kind of a runaway imagination, and I'll do interviews like this, if I think it will work out, and they're a lot of fun to do. People seem to appreciate them. I'm so glad you did.
No, I did. Yeah. I haven't made it all the way through your book yet because I just kind of got it recently, but I did read the interview with Sebastian the Crab, and that's what. And then I started skimming through the book, and I was like, Charles Dickens, and Oscar. What is going on inside of her head?
You'll like them, and I have to say that I have another friend who's also an actor and does voices. So when we did the Sebastian Crab on Movie Addict headquarters, Morgan Lawrence played the part of Sebastian the Crab, and we just did that. We just did the same dramatization, and he just sounded exactly like Sebastian the Crab. So I'm so lucky with the people that are willing to help with the show, and I just want to thank everybody who does that. And Morgan has been very good. He's even played Kermit the Frog on our show, and he's about any kind of voice that you want, Morgan Lawrence. So if you ever need a voice on your show, you can just call on Morgan Lawrence. Let me know, and I'll tell you how to get in touch with him.
Vocal handyman.
Yeah.
Well, over the years, you said it yourself. You're not a spring chicken. It's your words, not mine.
Yeah,
It is.
Though.
It is. You clearly had to adapt your writing style and interview style to not only the times but the changing forums. From newspaper to internet and so forth and radio. How have you done that? How have you adapted your writing style and interview style to keep with the times?
I did start out writing for print media, and I was doing that for about 5 years. I had to change from the style I used in print media when I wanted to do more online, and applied to be a member of the Online Film Critics Society. And the first time that I applied, I didn't get in because I think they were looking for something more informal in their reviews. But they were very kind. The people that were making the decisions were very kind, and they thought that I could benefit by being assigned a mentor from their group. And lo and behold, I was assigned to a young man named Ian Waldron Montgani, who was a great mentor, but it was kind of a Harold and Maude situation, because Ian hadn't even graduated from high school yet, and here I was, a grandmother who had been a vice president and a dean, and in the field of education for many, many years, an English teacher, so on and so forth.
Teach me.
And Ian was critiquing my reviews and helping me learn how to be more informal and to be more readable, and more accessible, and
so to speak.
He didn't know. I knew that he was, that he was in high school, but he had no idea that I was what my age was. But it worked out well. We finally met each other at one of the Telluride film festivals, and we were kind of surprised that we were at the way we looked.
Hello.
But he was very, very helpful. So yes, I did have to adapt my style, and I owe it all to Ian Waldron Montgani, if he's listening. I don't even know whether he's writing film reviews now, but he was, at the time that he was helping me, he was called the UK Critic, because he lives in Wales, and I sure do thank him for all his help. And also, who helped me get a little more amusing in my reviews was Marianne Johansson, who is the flick philosopher, and she helped me develop a more friendly style and a more interesting and entertaining style. But they both allowed me to keep enlightening people as well as entertaining them. I'm big on the entertainment.
So you went through, like you said, you were the dean, and you've gone through all of this learning, and then you have to get knowledge from a high school.
Yes,
schooler.
I loved it. Well, I always said when I was in the field of education that I learned as much from my students as they learned from me.
Right.
But that was, but not so much in when I taught second grade, because
I hope not.
And I only taught second grade for a couple of years, because all I did was teach the students songs from the movies, and they put on shows for their parents, and so. I think the powers that be thought that I belonged, with more advanced students who really wanted to learn.
I just put on these musicals for my personal enjoyment, and
yeah.
Well, how have you kept your passion for what you do?
Zach, you know how. I mean, you have the same problem. You might as well ask me, how do I keep breathing?
For our listeners who might not understand the lives of movie addicts, how do you keep your passion for what you do?
Yeah, right. It's as easy as breathing. That. I just. It all started with that first movie that I saw. I think I start the book out by telling about being a little 6-year-old that was just so afraid and terrified, and hiding under the seat at a movie theater, looking up at that gigantic monster, and being frightened of that monster, and yet just absolutely fascinated by that monster. And then I've been hooked on movies ever since, and there's nothing I like better than writing about movies, talking about movies, seeing movies, and most of the people know me, so that's what I like. Even when I was in the field of education, we were doing things related to movies. I would take field trips take students when I was teaching American Problems. We would go to field trips to movies like The Manchurian Candidate when we were studying brainwashing, and I was always involved in the follies, that you put on the talent shows and the follies. I was always involved in getting people doing that, to raise money for various school projects.
Right.
So it's just a part of who I am.
If you would, you've also authored a memoir with co-authored, I guess, with your husband. It Had to Be Us. you said that there are plans for it to be developed into a film. If you could kind of, the book that we have, The Confessions of a Movie Addict, it kind of goes into your guys' relationship a little bit. It's very interesting and nuanced, and if you could kind of go into that a little bit, the idea of the book being developed for film.
Well, that was, I'm really glad you asked about this because this is the thing that has me the most excited right now. That little book, It Had to Be Us, was the first book that I wrote, and I did write it with my husband. It's called It Had to Be Us, and we used the pseudonyms Harry and Elizabeth Lawrence.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't intend it to be published, but I workshopped it on the Zoetrope website, and a publisher saw that and said, this was a person who was starting up a publishing company, and they wanted this to be one of their beginning books. I mean, one of their first books. And I had no idea, and my husband had no idea that it would be, anything would come of it, because the reason we were writing it is that so many people wanted to know how in the world we got back together after being divorced and estranged from each other for almost 20 years.
Dumb and Dumber.
After being married for about 24 years.
Oh, my.
And so it was. So we decided we would take key dates on how we got back together, and my husband would tell his reflections on that, and I would tell my reflections of the same incident. And so it's kind of like a he remembers, she remembers format.
Oh wow, yeah, I like
that. And so it first it was a little paperback, and then the publisher stopped publishing, and so then the head of a website called the Romance Studio liked it and turned it into an ebook and sent it to the Hollywood Book Festival, and it won first place in the Hollywood Book Festival. And they were looking at the books that would transfer to another media like film or television. And then people who were reading the book kept saying, it should be a movie, it should be a movie. When is it going to be a movie? So filmmaker Misha Zubarev, who by that time had done a couple of reviews for my Real Talk Movie Reviews website, he had made some films, and he had read this, and he loved the story so much that he said he wanted to make a movie of it. So he spent all last year and completed the screenplay adaptation. And he really did such a beautiful job of it. He made it more visually exciting. I read the screenplay, and I just thought it was great. And he updated the time period, to make it more accessible to today's viewers. He emphasized the humor of our situation. And this is part that I really, really liked. He included some elements from Confessions of a Movie Addict.
Oh.
So, that I thought, oh, great! Now some of that book will be in there, and it really is quite romantic and amusing, and it has a lot of movie references, which makes me so happy. Now, Misha plans to direct the film, and this is just amazing. That he had 2 stars in mind while writing the screenplay, and he contacted. Now I can't release their names at this point, but both of the stars that he had in mind indicated their interest in playing Harry and Elizabeth. And Misha is currently working on finding the right producer to help find financing for the project. So keep your fingers crossed. I'm really, really excited about that. So I appreciate you asking about It Had to Be Us, because it really does mean a lot to my husband and to me.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I'll be keeping my eye on the progress as well, because I can't wait for your love life to be displayed for the masses.
I never thought that would be a movie, and maybe it won't. But at least right now things are looking pretty good. I was just so happy that somebody wanted to go to all the trouble of to do a screenplay, because that's a lot of work, and that's done. And then to have these 2 stars read it and say, oh yes, we want to play those 2 parts. It's
very
just,
cool.
more than I ever thought was possible.
Yeah. That's a big leap from where you started to where you are now. I mean, your career has gone nowhere but up, it seems like. And it seems like that your life would be a lot of fun.
Well, it is fun. As long as there are movies, I'm having fun.
Excellent. Well, I have one more question for you, and then we're going to get to the details about the giveaway, and we'll be done. All right, we're going to have a little fun here. I'm going to give you a few movie titles, and if you could, give me 3 words or less to sum up each. In your humble opinion, American Hustle.
3 words.
Or less.
Scam, jammed up.
Nice. Yeah, over the top. How about American Psycho with Christian Bale?
Boy, he was good in that. Wow.
Right? Yeah, that's one of my favorite of his roles because it's how he came to be who he is now. I think, sort of.
He was some. Oh, okay. My 3 words would be chilling 80s indictment.
Nice. I like it.
I think I started my review of American Psycho out by saying it was stylish, satirical, and soulless. So I could use those 3.
Very nice. No, that's pretty much perfect, especially the soulless part. Let's see. We have Stanley Kubrick famous Clockwork Orange.
Oh, I wish you hadn't asked me about A Clockwork Orange.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay, I'm going to give you sacrilegious, disturbing, horrifying. That's 3. Can I explain that?
You can keep going if you feel the need.
I mean, I just hate this that they put in this parody of my favorite musical number on screen from my favorite
I didn't even
movie
think
of all
about
time,
that.
That's Singing in the Rain.
Right. No, you mentioned it, and I didn't even think about that.
Oh.
Well, how about another Stanley Kubrick movie, Dr. Strangelove, or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Atomic Bomb?
Oh, good one.
Yeah, see, that it's much better.
Good one. Hilarious. Cold War comedy.
Nice. That was 4, but I won't hold that against you.
No, Cold War is hyphenated.
Oh, okay, there we go. So Cold-War.
Remember, I'm a former English teacher.
That movie definitely got me introduced to Peter Sellers and his masterfulness. He's off the wall. He's great.
Oh, what a great performance! And it's like that Tatiana Maslany I was talking about, playing all those different characters.
Mm-hmm.
And Peter Sellers, and my favorite line: "You can't fight in the war room."
Mein Führer.
Great choice.
James Earl Jones' first movie, even though he's in it for like 5 minutes, but.
Yeah.
Let's go with Pulp Fiction.
Dialogue. Overshadows violence.
Dialogue overshadows violence, huh? I like that a lot.
Wasn't that great dialogue? I mean, wasn't that the most important thing in that movie? I mean, that's not one of my favorite movies.
Right.
My husband really, really likes it. But there are sections in that, like when Samuel L. Jackson and John Travolta are talking about, what is it, the kind of cheeseburger or something? I mean, when they're driving along in the car.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there were some conversations in that were just priceless.
Oh, yeah, definitely. That's kind of a staple, I'd say, of a Tarantino movie generally, is that his dialogue is more striking than his visuals. I mean, Kill Bill was very visceral, but still, the dialogue is what makes a Tarantino film a Tarantino film.
Exactly. I'm with you on that 100%. He is one of my favorite directors. He is my husband's favorite, and he's one of my favorites.
Well, let's go with Inglourious Basterds, then. That was one of his more recent movies.
Now, there we're making some progress, aren't we?
Okay, yeah.
Tarantino's Fantasy War.
He didn't portray history extremely accurately, eh?
No, that's why it's a fantasy.
I was always confused as to how Adolf Hitler died, and Inglourious Basterds taught me that.
And what about, that's the first time I saw Christoph Waltz, and I just think
yeah.
he's absolutely marvelous.
Oh, yeah. No. Well, not no, yeah. He's excellent. That was his introduction pretty much to the mainstream United States audience, and he made an impact, for damn sure.
He's really one of those guys that you just love to listen to as well as watch. Probably one of the most articulate actors around.
Well, it kind of goes, I would say that role kind of goes back to what you're saying with Aaron Eckhart, that, he's just so devious. And it's like, that guy has got to be horrible. And then when you see him in interviews, he just seems like the most carefree, and humble and thankful person for the position he's in.
Yes, and he gives great speeches when he receives awards.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, I heard one of his interviews with Terry Gross on NPR. It was just, he was just completely, like, pretty much awestruck at the fact that Quentin wanted him in his movie, and he's just so humble. Let's go with a more cult, it's becoming a classic now, but a more cult classic, we'll call it The Big Lebowski.
Oh, yeah.
A Coen Brothers film.
Yeah. Oh, my gosh. This isn't my 3 words, but Sam Elliott's introduction at the end of that, when I saw that, I thought if I were Tsarina of the movies, I would have every film begin with a voiceover from Sam Elliott. He was so great, honestly. Okay. Mistaken Identity Fun.
Oh, okay. There we go. Couple more. We were just talking about...
Zach.
I know.
I like this.
It's not too bad. It kind of just popped in my head, and I was like, you know what? This seems like it would be a little fun segment to do with her. How about...
I love it.
We were talking about Annette Bening. How about American Beauty?
Oh, well, she was wonderful in that, and so was Kevin Spacey, but I got in trouble with people because I didn't like that movie, but
I know.
I did like their performances. So, acting trumps ugliness.
Awesome.
Yeah, I was hoping that Annette would get an Oscar for that, and I was glad that Kevin Spacey did, even though I thought that Annette's performance was really excellent. I mean, outstanding, splendid, as well as Kevin Spacey. And if he won, she should have won too, because she was just as good as Kevin in that. So
I wholeheartedly
agree. It was not
agree.
a happy ending as far as I'm concerned. It was a half a happy ending.
Let's go with the classic Alfred Hitchcock, Rear Window.
Hitchcock Strikes Again.
Nice. That's one of my favorite Hitchcock movies. I think it's just by the way he filmed it. I don't know, it was just such a personal and paranoid feeling that I had pretty much throughout the entire film.
Well, Hitchcock very seldom goes wrong. In his early work and middle work, I think the Family Plot, that last film that he made, he did. But this, he is my favorite director of all time.
Okay.
And Vertigo is always on my top 5. I change my mind about movies. What are your top 5? I change my mind. But Vertigo is always there. Singing in the Rain is always there. So I'm a big fan of Hitchcock's movies. I was very kind of disturbed about a couple of films that came out about Hitchcock. Was it the year before last?
The one with Anthony Hopkins, Sir Anthony Hopkins?
The Girl, I think it was The Girl. Toby Jones played Hitchcock.
Right.
And then Anthony Hopkins played Hitchcock, and I think the movie was called Hitchcock.
It was. I'm not a big fan.
And I don't like to see him maligned like that. And then I have interviewed Tippi Hedren, and she spoke very highly during her interview of Hitchcock, although she admitted that in The Birds, he did keep her having those birds attack in that one scene, and that was quite disturbing, and that was portrayed in one or maybe both of the films. And but I really think he just had an eye for how the film would look, and the story. Both the cinematic artistry and the story were important to him, and his movies showed that so much, and are always. I watch them whenever they are played on Turner Classic Movies, because I pick up something something new each time that I watch.
Absolutely.
And I'm just as entertained and just as much in suspense.
Oh,
no
yeah.
matter how many times I've seen his movies.
He was an innovator of his time. He's still considered an innovator. I mean, he's influenced countless directors, style. It's just ridiculous. I have North by Northwest, Vertigo, and Rear Window staring me at the face right now. And I kind of want to put them on.
Absolutely. Good ones, all good ones.
Well, finally, we'll wrap up this little game. This is one of my personal recent favorites. Recent as in, I don't know, the last 10 years, I guess. But Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind.
I want you to know that when I look over to my left, I have a photo signed by Jim Carrey. The reason I have that is because when he did, I think, the second Ace Ventura film, I wrote him a letter and asked him to make different, to move on from that and make different kinds of films.
Please.
And about 3 weeks later, I get this 8x11 envelope. I open it up, and it's a great picture of Jim Carrey, and it's signed, "Spank you very much, Jim Carrey."
Nice.
And that means a lot to me. But okay, this is not. I hate to disappoint you. This is not one of my favorite movies, but I get confused a lot with Kaufman and Gondry's work.
Right.
But Gondry, by the way, has done some of those Flight of the Conchord episodes.
Oh.
So he's not all bad, for sure. But anyway, okay, that movie, Mind Wipe Warning.
Mind Wipe Warning. That sounds like the robot from Lost in Space.
Yes.
No, I think what happened, like with Fight Club, that's one movie that I really relate to. I think it...
Oh, one of my favorites. That was wonderful.
Well, I think those movies like Eternal Sunshine just kind of came out at a time of my life where I really just understood them. Like wanting to erase, the memory of someone significant in your life that broke your heart, or, male angst, or whatever. It's just one of those movies that just kind of connected with me at the time.
It connected with a lot of people, and there were, I think, the reviews that are on by the critics that contribute to Real Talk Movie Reviews. I think there are several, well, at least more than one, and I'm in the minority on that. I mean, most critics just love that film, and I'll bet you if I saw that again, I might have a different opinion of it. Because you like it so much, I'm going to watch that again, Zach.
Well, one of the big things, too, with Michel Gondry, he does a lot of practical effects. So all of the effects are in camera. There's a lot of things going on. I mean, when he's in his dream world, it's collapsing. So when those things are happening, he's doing practical effects, which I really admire.
I'm going to look again. I have changed my mind on movies. The first time I saw The English Patient, I just thought, oh, this is just awful. And then a couple of years later, I watched it, I think, when the DVD came out, and I thought, this is such a great movie. What was wrong with me? So I'm going to have to do Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind again.
Oh, no. See, now I just built it up. Now I don't know if it will hold water. Oh, no.
Well, no. I'll tell you after I see it, okay?
I hope you enjoy it. Betty Jo Tucker, thank you very much for being on the show. I honestly, hopefully you can hear it in my voice, but I really appreciate you being on. It's been an absolute blast.
My pleasure. I mean, this has been a lot of fun. You're a great interviewer, and I just hope you keep up your passion for film, and wish you great success with your show. You're just a natural for doing this kind of interview and talking about movies.
It's our passion, so it's kind of hard to not show your enthusiasm,
Right.
Before you go, you were kind enough to send us a copy of your book, Confessions of a Movie Addict. We went over some of the stories that you'll be able to read in the book, but there are plenty more. There's reviews, suggestions, personal anecdotes. It's just a lot to take in, and it's a really good book. You were nice enough to give us a copy. Now we're going to return that favor and give a copy to our listeners. We like them to email the show or to Facebook us or Twitter, all that stuff. we like to ask the guest, if you could, give us a word or a couple of words or a phrase that you would like the listeners to send in. And the 10th listener that sends in this word or phrase will be sent a free copy of Confessions of a Movie Addict.
It did win first place as the memoir in the 2012 Royal Dragon Book Awards contest, and that's quite an accomplishment because
Absolutely.
Books that are 10 years old usually don't win awards. So I was one of the most surprised people in the world when it got the first place win. But the judges said it was just so entertaining and enlightening that they couldn't resist.
It is. If you'd like to give me a word or a few that we could have the listeners, send us the special code word, if you will. What would you like your code word to be for the giveaway?
You're asking me what code word?
Yes. It could,
Movie Addict.
Movie Addict. Perfect. You are wonderful. Spot on. Well, Betty Jo Tucker, thank you again for being on the show, and we look forward to keeping updated with what's going on, especially with It Had to Be Us.
I'll definitely keep you posted, and thanks so much for this fun interview, and we'll be sending you information as things develop on It Had to Be Us. So, bye for now.
Bye. That was fellow movie addict Betty Jo Tucker. Find us at movie_buzz at Twitter, moviebuzzed on Instagram. Find us on Facebook, moviebuzzed@gmail.com. Send us the code words, Movie Addict. And to the 10th respondent, you will receive a free, personalized, and autographed copy of Confessions of a Movie Addict by our guest, Betty Jo Tucker. And like I said, I've been reading pretty much every day for the past week. Almost done with it. It's super enjoyable. This lady has had interactions with some of the biggest names in Hollywood and some of the more obscure names that certain people will be really excited to read about. Send us the code word, and we'll send you out a free copy. And also, don't forget to go to bettyjotucker.com to read her movie reviews and to check out her radio show, Movie Addict Headquarters. I was reading her reviews. Some of them, I completely do not agree with. I'm like, what? Do we watch the same movie? But that's what, it's always good to have a different perspective going in to a movie and kind of do some self-analysis, and maybe you don't know what you're talking about. You as in you, not you as in her. She knows absolutely what she's talking about. I'm just saying, if you read one of her reviews that doesn't necessarily jive with your point of view, you might see where she's coming from and where you shouldn't be coming from, is all I'm saying. I'm going to stop rambling, and we're going to get to the second part of the interviews, Volume 2. I'm trying to be a little less cursy with my guests, and I think that first one went pretty well. So we'll see if we can continue the trend here. A little more PG-13 show. Maybe we'll appeal to the masses. Unlikely, but we might. And for the second half of the Movie Buzzed, The Interviews, Volume 2, we're going to welcome to the show Christina Hamlett. Let's get her on the phone and get this damn thing going. Boom. That's how we do here on the show. We're going to jump on back to the Team ProCreate guest line. But before that, we're going to get a little more Movie Buzzed. I think that should about do it. We'll see how this goes. And, yeah. I mean, the show's called Movie Buzzed. I give the guests ample time to check the show out. I give them links and whatnots. So even if you just access one of the main pages of one of our many web entities, you'll see that there's nudity involved, like one of the listeners pointed out. And I think once you see that, you kind of know what direction you're going to be going, what kind of things you're going to be getting yourself into. I'm not saying it's anyone's fault, that they don't know what they're getting into or whatever, but just saying, you probably wouldn't invite a guest on without at least doing a little research, and vice versa. I probably wouldn't go on a show unless I did a little research about it to find out that I'm not going to support Nazism or something. So if you're just tuning in and listening and you might want to be a guest, welcome to the Cannibal Pro Choice Hour. I'm your host, Zach. Won't you join me for a bite to eat? I'm a funny fella. And before we get to our interview, I'd just like to remind you, the listener, that we will be having some fun coming up with some movies, some actors, some special guests. We'll be watching Clerks coming up, Me, Myself, and Irene, the continuation of our Harry Potter series, Harry Pothead series, what have you. We'll also be watching The Crazies as well, and and Hunger Games. So that is the most recent lineup that we have, not necessarily in that order, but we'll go ahead and let you know what's coming next. Okay, that's enough of me blathering on like an idiot. Let's get to the interview, shall we? Shall I? I shall. What movie buzzed interview would be complete without beer? Didn't let the beer get cold enough. We'd like to welcome to Movie Buzzed award-winning author, professional script consultant, and ghostwriter, Christina Hamlett. How are you this evening?
I'm doing just great, Zach. Thanks for inviting me.
No, thanks for being on. We've been kind of corresponding back and forth pretty frequently, so this is the culmination of all of our communication. Let's just dive right into the questions, if you don't mind, because I'm quite curious about a few things here. I'm really interested to hear what you have to say.
Well, I hope to satisfy that curiosity.
Yeah, just to make you, just to build the pressure even more. I'm really excited, so hopefully you can gratify this. As a script consultant, what are some of the red flags you look for when first taking in a script? And for our listeners who aren't really aware, what is a script consultant? I guess that's important.
Well, a script consultant is someone who reads lots of scripts, stops a lot of bad movies from coming to theaters near you, and offers recommendations on what can make a script better than it is, so that the writer can get some good takeaway value from this and learn how to either fix that script or make their next script even more exciting. The biggest red flag that I always find is always on the first page, and that's the formatting.
Nice.
For your listeners who aren't familiar with screenwriting, screenwriting follows a very precise set of rules, and rules that new writers either don't bother to learn in the first place or they simply choose to ignore in order to make a bold, gutsy statement about themselves and their project. And this includes using multiple fonts and sizes, sometimes in different colors or on funky fluorescent paper, inconsistent placement of master scenes and action lines and dialogue. And just to share a funny story, I even read a script once where the writer cut out celebrity faces from People magazine and pasted them in the margins with notes like, and this role should be played by George Clooney.
Because, hint.
Odd. And mistakes in spelling and grammar and punctuation are another big turnoff for me, because what this communicates is the writer is sloppy and hasn't taken the time to really present a professional work product. And I also find, Zach, that a lot of writers simply start their story in the wrong place. I call this the James Michener approach. In other words, we're going to read 400 pages about pterodactyls and volcanoes, and then finally, missionaries arrive in Hawaii.
Hooray.
Well, if the plot is about the missionaries, we don't need that long backstory intro. Just cut to the chase, because audiences basically have the attention span of gnats, and if they're not hooked in the first 10 minutes, frankly, they're not going to be.
I agree. Well, except for this audience here, they're very mature, so they can hang with anything. But other than that...
Okay.
Other than that...
All right.
No, I understand. Yeah, that would be... I'm sure your job is sometimes very interesting, to say the least.
Well, even as we speak, I am judging an international screenwriting competition, and I have read 4 dozen
Oh my
scripts.
gosh.
These are short scripts,
Mhm.
12 pages, since the weekend, and I have yet to find a single kernel of excitement and originality and brilliance in any of them, and lots of very, very scary, weird formatting.
You said you're like even just a kernel, so it's not even that some of it presents itself as acceptable. It's just all kind of all over the place.
With that 12-page cap on these submissions, this is assuming everyone is following by the rules with the margins and the fonts. I've read 3 scripts far where the people did their scripts in a 9-point Arial narrow with 1/4-inch margins all the way around, and
double-sided.
I think it would actually come out to maybe 28 pages. So I don't know who they think they're fooling, but they're not fooling me.
Right, no. I don't think much is going to get by you from what I've read. You're pretty experienced. What are some more of the humorous or odd ideas that you've been pitched, not necessarily with the crazy format whatnot, but maybe just the ideas themselves? I'm sure there's plenty.
Okay. All right. The number of oddities I've encountered in the years I've been doing this would truly fill a book. I mean, how many hours do you and I have to chat this evening? 2 of them, however, are especially memorable. So I recommend you not be drinking coffee or anything when I'm relating these, because it will all come out your nose.
Okay, 1 second. I was kidding. Go ahead.
You ready?
Yes,
okay.
Yes, I'm done drinking.
All right. The first one was a guy who wanted to write a true epic film about Lewis and Clark. And this would be told through the eyes of a handsome lieutenant who joined the expedition at the last minute and along the way fell in love with an Indian chief's beautiful daughter.
Of course.
You're hooked, right?
Right now, go.
Now, yeah. Now, if you're writing about Titanic, you have a lot of flexibility to make up as many fake people or composites of real people as you want. The Lewis and Clark expedition, however, was one of the best documented road trips of its time. And it involved 33 men, a woman, a baby, and a dog. So you can't just go making up fake lieutenants and beautiful Indian princesses and calling it a true epic.
No.
And, of course, the real tapper on this is the guy thought that Clark should be played by Michael Douglas and Catherine Zeta-Jones could be Sacagawea. Okay, you heard it here first.
Right, yeah.
The other really funny pitch was a gentleman from Pakistan. He wanted to write a project that he titled The Passion of the Christ, the Next Day.
What?
Seriously, I don't make these people up.
So what?
Now, he was very economically minded about this project, and he asked if I knew Mel Gibson.
Of course.
And the idea being that I could ask Mel if the writer could borrow any leftover footage from The Passion of the Christ to use for flashbacks, because that would save a lot of time and money in the filming.
Well,
I've heard it all.
I'm just curious how The Passion of the Christ the next day could even involve Christ himself, because he was dead at that point, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay.
And why not The Passion of the Christ 3 days later?
Yeah,
But
I know.
no, it was the next day, and Roman soldiers were sitting around and looking up on the hill, and they were drinking lattes and wondering if there could be very serious ramifications from what they had done the previous day.
Right, just contemplating life and all the meaning behind what they have just done.
I'm sure that's exactly what they did.
That's awesome.
Oh my.
No, that's it's good because it gives you these stories to tell. Well, when you are reading scripts, how do you deal with a writer whose style doesn't necessarily lend itself to movies?
I deal with them very honestly, which is something a lot of them don't like.
And I ask them if they've ever considered writing novels or short stories or stage plays, and most of them haven't. So accordingly, they're going to continue to get frustrated with all the rejection their screenplays get because they're convinced that movies are where the big money is and that's what they want. And what I point out to them is that if they switch their mindset to wanting more creative control over their intellectual property, or for that matter, immortality, they might want to think about a different vehicle to deliver their story to audiences. Because not every plot lends itself to a visual medium, especially if there's a lot of blah, 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 blah talking and very little action and copious amounts of backstory. And I think people are convinced, yes, I've come up with a great plot. It has to be a movie. But in fact, it could be a better something else if they could just wrap their heads around really thinking about what it is they're trying to say.
I like that. No, you sound like you would be. I mean, I don't say brutally honest, because some people take, people take honesty very brutally. So we might as well just say, I just have this feeling that you're very upfront and honest with these people, and that you've shattered someone's reality more than once.
Yes, and I have actually gotten emails from people who have said, "Dear Ms. Hamlett, I really hate you, and here are my reasons, and everybody else likes my script, and my mom likes it," which makes me think, what are you, 12? And they say, when I accept my Academy Award and I'm on national television, I'm going to tell everyone that you didn't like my idea, and you're going to feel really, really, really stupid.
How often has that happened?
That probably happens at least 10 times a year. I think, criticizing a script in any way, and I do it diplomatically, and I try to explain to them why this doesn't quite work. It's up against a lot of competition. I'm kind of thinking, they already did a movie about a beautiful woman impregnated by the devil for a cult, or about a little alien that gets left behind by the mothership and makes friends with kids in suburbia. Why don't you try something different, or why don't you write something different? And it's probably akin to, no matter how nicely you say it, they hear it as you've just told them that they have ugly children. And everyone thinks their children are the most beautiful little creatures in the world. So if you say your script doesn't quite work, then what they hear is, you just said, I have an ugly baby. I hate you, and I'm going to come to your house and set your hair on fire. They're very, very protective of what they've created. And well, they should be, but if they're paying someone for professional advice, they're not paying for someone's friendship and to be liked and to be told wonderful things. They are paying for honest advice.
I need someone like you in my entourage just to express my opinion.
Okay, where do I sign up? I'm there, Zach. Count me in.
Well, so I'm sure this has been an issue, but your website states, do not send unsolicited manuscripts. They will not be read. So do you accept submissions by request only, or do you allow authors to send queries first, or how often do people submit their work without going through the proper procedure or channels?
Oh, to answer the last question first, more often than you can possibly imagine.
All the time.
Well, if writers want me to read their work, the first step is to send an email query to introduce themselves, and very briefly, and I mean briefly as in 25 words or less, describe what their project is about. And they also need to have a clear understanding that I don't read scripts and provide detailed coverage notes for free. That would be like if you went up to a doctor at a party and said, I think my spleen needs to come out. I really can't afford the surgery, so could you just do it on your day off?
Right.
Yes, I'm sure a lot of doctors would jump at that opportunity. And on the rare occasions when I'm just being nice and I request the first 5 pages and a 1-paragraph synopsis, 9 out of 10 writers will send the entire thing and tell me it's okay if I just want to stop reading at page 6. So if I only ask for 5, 5 is really all I want to get. And as you can imagine, I'm frequently inundated with emails from total strangers who say, "Hi there, you. I've attached my 100,000-word novel. Can you just read it in your spare time and tell me what you think?" And at the other end of the spectrum are teenagers with an inflated sense of entitlement who essentially demand that I refer them to someone important in Hollywood because they have a great idea that they haven't even written yet. But they just know if I give them Steven Spielberg's number and they call him up and said, "Christina said I could call you," then that's going to be their next blockbuster film.
I think maybe if you could call Steven Spielberg up, you might help these people out. So maybe...
Yeah, I'm sure he's just sitting by the phone. And
he's just waiting
to hear from me.
The next
everyone is very much looking for shortcuts. We live in an instant now society. And I'm sure if my next book was a book of all of the unlisted telephone numbers of every important person who can get your movie made, and I could charge whatever for it, it would sell out the first day, and all of those people would change their phone numbers by the next day.
Well, I guess this kind of goes back a little bit to where we were talking about, it's about book-to-film adaptations. It's kind of just a random question thrown in there. But why do you think that so many book-to-film adaptations are considered disappointments? I've had a problem with this myself. So I'm just curious if you can explain the phenomenon.
Oh, absolutely. I think they're disappointments because when you read a book that you really love, you're playing all of the scenes in a movie in your head, and you're doing your own casting, and sometimes maybe even casting yourself in the dashing leading man role. Have you ever done that? Come on, Zach.
No.
Be honest.
No.
Have you?
Of course.
No?
Yes, of course. I do it every day.
Okay. Well, in the adaptation process, that casting all gets done by someone else who also takes liberties in cutting your favorite scenes and adding new scenes and blowing things up and even changing endings to keep an audience happy or possibly hint at a sequel. And as for a famous adaptation that was successful, Margaret Mitchell didn't like the casting of Clark Gable as Rhett Butler in Gone with the Wind.
Mm-hmm.
The actor she had in mind, and if you read the character's description in her book, it was Groucho Marx.
Oh my, that would be that'd be a little different movie.
Mm-hmm. But that's who she saw, and everyone was assuming she wrote the Rhett Butler role specifically for Clark Gable, and she said, "No, I didn't. I thought that was a horrible casting choice."
Well, one of the more recent ones I've had issue with is The Rum Diary. It's an adaptation of a Hunter S. Thompson book. I just feel like with that one specifically, they were trying to maybe bank on recent events or something like that. His recent death, it became like a big to-do. A lot of celebrities knew him, like John Cusack and Johnny Depp, so I think they were kind of, I don't know, they sort of rushed it maybe, or I don't know. It just didn't have the spirit of like a Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, so I just had to go on a little rant there, sorry. The Rum Diary just really kind of it's stuck in my craw or however the saying goes. So, okay, let's move on to a little more nuance in your career. Through the course of my research, the word ghostwriting has come up multiple times. What is ghostwriting, and why do clients need a ghostwriter?
Well, often have you said to someone, or perhaps had it said to you, you should write a book. You are so interesting. You should write all this down. And people would pay squillions for it. A lot of people may have a book inside of them, but they don't always have the skill sets or the time to sit down and write it themselves. So a ghostwriter is the, let's say, silent partner who is paid to develop the idea, turn it into a commercially viable manuscript, and also walk the client through an understanding of today's publication and production business. So when all is said and done, it's the client's name that goes on the finished product and the client who keeps all the money if it sells. It should also be pointed out, though, that ghostwriters like myself are precluded from acting as an agent for a client's project because that would be a conflict of interest.
Right, of course. Well, that's pretty interesting because what I think of, or what I normally would assume a ghostwriter is pretty much the first part of that. But I really like the fact that you kind of take them even further and actually discuss the publishing aspect of it. And, I'm sure you kind of hedge people's expectations there a little bit quite often.
And ghostwriters have to be, in a way, chameleons. If you came to me and said, I want to do a novel on such and such, I would have to really pick your brain, get what your vision is for this book, and write it from a man's point of view. I could certainly take your idea and write it from my point of view, but if you're going to put your name on this, people will say, Zach?
Yeah, that's not
your
voice.
It really doesn't sound like it. Did you really write this book? And you want the client to be able to show it off and say, why, yes, I did. And it is their book because they paid for it.
Right.
It's like paying someone to do your homework that you turn in and get an A. It's a confidential agreement. You don't run around telling everybody.
Right.
And I work on everything from people who have an idea, but they could not write their way out of a paper bag, and they say, well, how do we structure this? And I ask them questions like, well, who's your target audience? How would you plan to market this? What books would this be similar to? Or what movie could this be compared to? I also have a lot of clients who got 30,000 words into the novel or whatever that they were writing, and their loved one said, oh, honey, I really love you a lot, but this really isn't very good. Can you pay someone to fix it? And so it's all stages that I get work, things that they've already started or things they think they want to do. And I would say over half of them I'm approached to do memoirs. But a lot of the people who approach me to do that are respectfully people that you've never heard of.
Right.
They feel like I have lived an interesting life and I want to tell everyone about this, or I have had a really rotten life and this is going to be the tell-all trashy book that I go after my ex-spouse or my terrible children, and this book will come out, and won't they feel really, really, really bad?
Probably. They might feel bad, but no one else is going to know anything about it.
Yeah, nobody cares who all these people were. So I try to dissuade those people. I want to know, what is your reason for wanting to do this? And the only good reason is you have a story inside of you and you're passionate about it and you want to share it, you feel you have something to say. If it's strictly you're out for revenge, I try to dissuade people from that because really no good will come of that.
So through your career, you've done ghostwriting. I mean, you've written in other people's voices, your own voice. You've written plays, feature film scripts, books, columns, interviews. The list goes on. How was your? Well, it's incredible. It's a lot to read. How has your writing style evolved since the beginning of your career?
Well, when I first began writing, I paid very little attention to marketing and diversifying. For instance, I'd write an article, I'd sell it to one publication, and that was that. And nowadays, when I write an article, I'm already considering 24 ways to spin it and sell it to 24 different venues. And the same with research. I do a lot of research for my novels and my plays and my articles. And whatever I don't use in a particular project, I get very excited finding a home for it in something else. I basically don't let anything go to waste.
Right.
If I looked it up or I wrote it down, it's going to find a home somewhere. But the one thing, when you were asking me about all of the different genres and types of writing that I do,
Mm-hmm.
the one thing that has never changed in 40 years, and this is rather remarkable because I only claim to be 35, is
Wow.
the fact that I love playwriting more than anything else that I create, and especially writing plays for the high school market,
Mm-hmm.
because these are the future actors and directors and producers and playwrights and theater-going audiences. And anything I can do to excite them about the world of possibilities in live theater, that's what I'm most proud of. And when you talk to me again in another 40 years and ask me that same question, my voice will be all old and crotchety, but I'll go, Zach, I still love playwriting, and I always will.
Surprisingly, you'll only be 38 at that time. So.
I will, yes.
Well, speaking of kind of the more inspiring the actors and directors of tomorrow and audience, really.
Mm-hmm.
What is, I read about this Seuss spear, and it interested me.
Mm-hmm.
Well, how and why did this project come into existence? What exactly is it for our listeners, if you don't mind?
Okay. Well, Shakespeare is a collection of full-length Shakespearean spoofs that my colleague Jamie Dare and I wrote for Contemporary Drama Service.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a fun way to introduce the Bard's work to high school students with an approach that's not only written entirely in rhyme, which was a challenge in and of itself, but it also incorporates a lot of pop culture. For instance, in Hamlet, Here's a Who, all of the characters they're in full Shakespearean costume, but they all have cell phones with distinctive ringtones. And the real reason Ophelia goes crazy is because Hamlet unfriends her on Facebook. She's very distraught about that. In Romeo and Juliet's restaurant wars, the two families are feuding because their respective restaurants are competing for a prize on Top Chef. So it's fun things like that that will make it instantly relatable to the kids.
Mm-hmm.
But sadly, with the exception of private schools around the country, Shakespeare is not being taught as much as it was when I was in high school.
Right.
And what is very exciting to my writing colleague and myself is we hear from drama teachers around the country who are just crazy about the Shakespeare concept. And one gentleman said to me, in the midst of rehearsal, one of the actors said, well, now, this is based on something else, right? The Shakespeare guy, he wrote this thing about Hamlet.
Oh, yeah.
Said, yes, he did. Well, what's that about? Can you rent us a movie or something to watch in class? Or could you get copies of the original Hamlet so that we can find our characters and understand the story and discuss it? And wow, what a rush. If only one student in a production of one of the Shakespeares gets curious about, well, who is this Shakespeare dude? I'm going to look him up. That sounds interesting.
Wasn't there something I saw with Ethan Hawke or something like that? It's how it's how the world relates now, is just through celebrities almost. I graduated high school 10 years ago, and we were, it's completely different from even then. It's insane to me. It's crazy. I can't keep up with all this stuff. I mean,
very much so.
28-year-old guy, I should be all over the social media and stuff, and I don't know. It's pretty overwhelming. These kids have a lot on their plates nowadays.
They really do.
Well, you help out. You were talking about helping the next generation through your writing, with these plays, and you do essays and articles and things. But how else do you help writers other than through your writing, through the ghostwriting and things like that?
In addition to dispensing copious amounts of advice, as long as it's asked for politely and professionally, I do want to emphasize that. I teach workshops, and I also offer online classes in screenwriting, playwriting, and writing for television.
Nice.
So I literally have students across the country and all over the world, because unlike a traditional classroom or an online chat room, the students are all ages. They're high school students. I have someone currently who's 75 and always wanted to write a stage play and thought, well, this would be interesting. The students work at their own pace, and the interaction is one-on-one. The homework assignments, which are very creative and lots of fun, are submitted to me via email and then critiqued. And I even allow do-overs if I feel they haven't quite nailed the principles of the lesson. And listeners can learn more about that just by visiting my website at www.authorhamlet.com. And that's www.authorhamlet.com. And if they can't remember that website, as long as they remember the name Christina Hamlett, and it's Christina with a C and Hamlet with 2 T's, I am all over the internet.
You
with
are.
Articles and interviews in my books. Sometimes I think I'm found too much by crazy people.
If you Google you're the only person apparently named Christina Hamlett in the United States. There's an IMDb page. There's your website. There's multiple websites.
I'm everywhere.
I know you are. I like that. It seems like that part of your philosophy, if you want to call it that, highlights like a communal aspect of writing. And it's not, you always see in the movies, or you read or whatever, like the writer going off by himself in a cabin in the woods or like to his summer home and being by himself. And, it never shows like this collaborative sort of process, at least as far as I'm concerned. So I really, I appreciate the communal aspect that you kind of represent.
Well, and if you're going to write material that is meant to be delivered aloud, whether it's a movie or a stage play, it is absolutely critical that you read your own material out loud, or you recruit your friends to read it for you, because oftentimes what looks good in print sounds really doofy or long-winded when it's coming out of the mouths of actors. So with my various projects, the first person to read anything that I do is my husband. We have both been on stage. He sang opera for a couple of seasons until he decided to become an attorney. I spent 16 years acting and directing. And we can both do all kinds of funny accents. So whenever I have a new script, I print out copies for the two of us, and we make martinis and sit at the dining room table and divide up all of the parts and do the whole play out loud. And so on summer nights when the windows are open and people are going by, I'm pretty sure they think at least 17 other people are living with us or partying, because we really throw ourselves into the passion of the play.
I like it. Christina Hamlett, I have a script idea I'd like to give to you. It's about an opera singer who turns into an attorney. It's great.
Okay. I'm feeling this one. That's good. And do he and his wife have the world's cutest dog?
Right.
Because everything goes better with a cute dog in it, right?
That's what you do as a script consultant. You give other people great ideas, like adding a cute dog to their stories. I love it.
As long as no harm comes to the cute dog.
Absolutely
and
not.
I hate reading a script where gratuitously they kill off a cute animal just to make the audience say, "Oh no!"
Oh yeah, just a squirm.
I tend to stop reading scripts when I encounter that.
Keep that in mind for anyone trying to submit a script there. Before we go, I guess, you were nice enough to send us over a copy of your book, Screenwriting for Teens, and we're going to give out a free copy to one of our listeners. First of all, I'd like to assume that it's not just for teenagers, but it could help anybody that's looking to write a script.
Absolutely. In fact, I'd say probably over half of the people who buy the book are adults who want to understand the basics, all the nuts and bolts, everything that goes into writing a screenplay or a film short. And I've done book signings where adults will come up and say, I'm buying this for my teenager. Could you autograph it to him? Sure. Well, what's your son's name?
Right.
And coincidentally, the son's name is always the same as their name, but that's okay. I say, I hope your son enjoys this. Oh, he will. Yeah, we'll read it together. Yes, we will. Thank you very much.
Why is your son a senior?
Yes.
So you were nice enough to give us a free copy of the book to give out. We've been kind of giving out a code word for listeners to send to the show, and the whatever 10th listener or whatever number I decide gets a copy of Screenwriting for Teens. So if you would be so kind, what is a phrase or a few words or something that you would like our listeners to send in order to receive a free copy of your book?
The secret phrase,
Uh-oh.
and if you are a fan of Broadway musicals, you might even know what it's from. The phrase is defying gravity.
Defying gravity. Excellent.
Mm-hmm.
So, if you are listening to this podcast, you can find us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and you can also email the show and send in Defying Gravity in order to win a free copy of Screenwriting for Teens by Christina Hamlett. Christina Hamlett, it has been an awesome experience and a great pleasure having you on the show. I've had a lot of fun here. You've been a very fun guest, so I appreciate your time.
Oh, I've had fun too, and I am expecting right after this is live with your listeners that suddenly my email inbox is going to be inundated with perky, plucky, professional query letters, and that I'll have a whole new batch of very exciting scripts to read.
The Movie Buzz podcast does not encourage you to send unsolicited screenplays to Christina Hamlett, please. I would appreciate that.
Yes, because otherwise Zach is going to hear about it, and I will just have to come back there and set your hair on fire.
Please represent me and the show accordingly, properly. I would appreciate that. So, Mrs. I don't like to throw. I'll just say Christina Hamlett. How about that? Christina Hamlett.
Okay.
Thank you for being on the show. We appreciate it. It's
You are
wonderful.
a wonderful host, and I can't believe how fast the time flew by.
I know.
It's been having fun.
I appreciate your participation this evening, and I hope you have a good rest of the night.
All right. Take care.
All righty, you
Bye-bye.
too. Bye. And that was author, script consultant, and Renaissance woman, Christina Hamlett. And as you heard, go ahead and send over the secret, special, super-duper code words. Gravity defying? Defying gravity. I think it's defying gravity. I believe that would be correct. So go ahead and send the super secret special super-duper code word gravity defying gravity on over to @movie_buzzed on Twitter, Movie Buzzed, one word, at Instagram, or you can email the show, moviebuzzed@gmail.com. gmail.com, gmail.com, or you can find us over on Facebook. And also keep in mind, if you'd like a copy of Confessions of a Movie Addict, send over the secret super special code words, Movie Addict, to the aforementioned places on social media and or emails. We will get that. We will send you out a free copy of either Screenwriting for Teens or Confessions of a Movie Addict. That will wrap up the show. This episode of Movie Buzz is brought to you by Team ProCreate. As always, connect, share, collaborate on projects with other artists, and you will create your own destiny. Head over to teamprocreate.com, check them out. Come on back for the next show. Hit us up on social media. We're out. I'm out. There is no we here. I keep saying that, and right now it's just me. I'm not insane. Movie Buzz coming at you.
It's time for Movie Buzz. It is time for Movie Buzz. Tell your mom, your sister, and your cousin it's time for Movie Buzz. Here comes your host, Zach, carrying a six-pack. Come on over, enjoy the fun. It's time for Movie Buzz. Yeah, come on over, enjoy the fun. It's time for Movie Buzz.